So good afternoon, everyone. This panelist will be discussing on the anti-counterfeiting and 360-degree strategy on brand protection. We have Anubhav is here. So we have Anubhav, welcome. Yeah, get started. Thank you, Anubhav. Great part. Thank you. So Anubhav is a brand protection head in India for Jockey International Incorporation. And we have Chhavi Jain. Chhavi Jain is IP Counsel for us. And then Pankaj Monga. Pankaj Monga is CEO of Jain Counsel for Spark Consulting. Great. So as the topic goes as anti-counterfeiting and 360-degree strategy, I have done some sizing of this counterfeit market to understand how big the market could be. And I was unable to get a right answer, as this is leading to a lot of reports and a few of the prominent reports like OECD and EU IQ reports, and those were dated again 2016, and they were estimating this global trade of counterfeit goods. And so is the case for other reports as well. All of them are trying to estimate the market size of these counterfeit goods. OECD report says 509 billion. It is in 2016. And then international. Yes. So it is 1.3. There are other estimates which say hundreds of billions, over $1 trillion, and all of these are estimates. There are no specific market sizing is possible for this market. But otherwise, the general estimation is that it is also growing, right? A CAGR rate is 1.9%. But that is also an estimate. It could be much higher than what we think. So the problem here is twofold. It also have a negative impact on the consumers, at the same time brands. So a few things that I have noted down there. How it impacts the brand. It causes reputation damage to the brands. This is one impact. The second one is revenue loss. Third one is intellectual property theft. All the effort that companies have done. And the cost, legal cost. At times for somebody else's fault, like brand for drag. And then consumer trust erosion. And insofar as consumer is concerned, there are major impact in terms of health and safety risk and waste of money for the consumers, not unlocking the real value for consumers' hard-earned money, and no resource for defects, right? No counterfeit product buyers have no recourse for a legal remedy. That's another problem that consumer will face. And also, by doing so, they will be supporting an illegal activity. Last one is loss of privacy and data. There are high chances that these counterfeiters not only affect the health of a consumer, but also take away the personal data, privacy, and then cause larger financial impact to these consumers. So these are the broad points that I just was going through before this panel, and I would like to open the panel with asking questions to the panelists. I will just take a seat and then ask the next. So. Whom should I start? I will start with you, Pankaj. Right? I'm sure because you are from the consulting background and have been into this brand protection, been as a brand protection professional more than a decade. Just trying to understand, how this digital landscape evolved. What are the key trends impacting this brand protection? As it evolved as of today.
Right. Thanks, Panduranga. Great question there. In fact, I've been in this business of brand protection since last 25 years. I've really seen the counterfeiting world has evolved and how times are changing. So, in my earlier days, I used to be counsel for Motion Picture Association of America, and we had those pirated DVDs and VCDs, those hardwoods. Those are no longer there. And we used to conduct a lot of enforcement actions in catching the pirates, selling and distributing and using CD burners, manufacturing also. So times have really evolved. That movie piracy is one big thing. I was then on the product side. I worked for a few of the largest healthcare companies, and I've seen how from physical form of retailing and distribution of counterfeit goods has gone digital. It has now been made available on the online marketplaces, even on e-commerce platforms, the big names. I will not take any names here, but essentially we hear a lot of complaints coming in. But I would still say that the penetration in the digital world of counterfeiting is just about 10 to 15%. The hard goods are still available in the market. The traditional channels of distribution of counterfeit product are still there. But here we are discussing about the involvement of digital space. So e-commerce platforms and e-commerce websites are selling and distributing counterfeits. We have social media channels as well. You have Facebook, Instagram. Telegram is one which is now causing a lot of trouble because there's no real way of detecting as to who is posting the messages, and the trade is happening on Telegram as well. We have several concerns with regard to that, and essentially, not being able to know your seller is a big challenge. If in case your brands are violated from a brand owner's perspective, you really don't know as to against whom you will be initiating an action. Advent of this digital mode or digital channel, it has actually gotten globalization. You can really get counterfeit products from abroad as well, and especially when we are talking about garments and fashion goods. So you can order goods from China and can use it there. So several things that I would like to point out. One is that counterfeiting has increased on the e-commerce platforms. Again, you would see increasing counterfeiting trends on the social media platforms. You would see that this is now becoming a global trade, and in true sense, you were talking about globalization. So this counterfeiting has now become a truly globalized challenge. As also, counterfeiters are using newer technologies. They are, in fact, using packaging which are very close to the genuine product. They have come very close. It is even difficult for the brand owners to distinguish between the genuine and the counterfeit. And this is thanks to technology. As I always used to tell in my presentation, the counterfeiters don't need to create a product, a counterfeit product. They need to mimic the packaging. So they invest 80% of their resources in mimic the packaging, and once they have come close to the genuine packaging, they have actually made their sale. They are really not bothered about what product goes in, what is the quality of the product that goes in on the side. So, with these points,
interesting. I think the larger point, like you mentioned about the movie piracy. Like those days it was CD. Now it is like still people are doing this through online, right? Downloadable movie copies. That the problem persists, but channel changed. So will the methods like we used to contain this counterfeiting in those days, do you think those methods still hold good today? Like, do we need to do something better? Like, is there any innovative way that we have to follow? In precise, can we follow the same methods to contain this counterfeiting even
In other cases, it is still happening. As I was telling you, the physical channels of distribution still remain when it comes to like hardware. Those channels still remain. It is not complete replacement, right? So in those cases, you need to have a strategy to address both. Otherwise, your brand protection strategy would be incomplete if you are looking at just one channel. So old methods would still hold good because you need to basically mitigate the circumstance there. At the same time, you need to innovate and find newer ways of addressing these new challenges which emerge in the digital landscape. So,
understood. Chhavi, you want to add in?
Yeah, hi. I think one of the pieces I really want to share here, I think as brand owners, we often face that whether it's the website mirroring, whether it's those domain names being tweaked slightly, whether it's an S or a Z, or very similar e-commerce platforms having very small instances, like you said, that packaging being very, very similar. Even in investment, even as brand owners, we often spend a lot of resources in creating new packaging to not discourage this kind of behavior in buying counterfeits. But we often see the consumer, not only are we losing in terms of consumer trust, and that is exactly why we work towards it, but also the fact that in terms of this really creates a void in terms of innovation. I mean, of course, a lot of us often feel, I personally feel that when there is technology on one part, counterfeiters ace in terms of getting a technology better than yours. And they give you a matching to the extent. I recently had an incident wherein one of the persons from my product team said, I really can't understand which is the correct product. Whether this is our genuine product or that. So, you often come up with real life instances. And this problem of counterfeiting now in digital space, earlier we had an address where we could go up to a person and say, okay, you need to stop doing this, back court's order or raiding their premises. But now these unknown faces and somebody who's working from some remote location, it's very difficult to even trace for that. Even with the court order, sometimes it's very difficult for me to kind of trace this person who's operating, who's making these products. I raid one location, they go on to the second location, a third location, or the fourth location. So this problem is really getting widespread to a very vast extent, and something needs to be addressed in terms of this. Generally, brands, what they are trying to do in terms of this is consumer education and innovative product packaging on a very, very smaller timelines. You're changing your product packaging because then you know the circle piece that okay, if this is evolving, then okay, if there is something spillover, then the problem this is not happening. Counterfeit, it really has to be that integrated in your system to do something like that, because otherwise it becomes very difficult to have this as an industry. That's what I would say.
Yeah, well said. So, see, counterfeiters are adopting very well, like through this technology, and then in the digital era, they have been like using it effectively to ensure that they do their business well. The traceability has become murkier, even more murkier than it used to be. Right? I think that's the broader points that I can take from both of you. You yourself being a brand protection professional, would you want to like look from a lens of a brand protection officer of an organization? How would you see this traceability, or else you want to like add any other point?
Thank you very much. So the question here is, are the old methods effective, not effective when it comes to tackling counterfeiting and product infringement or brand infringement? 22 years back when I started my brand protection career, we really had not much of online counterfeiting or infringement problem. What has happened all these years is the whole landscape has changed. The way the brands used to protect their intellectual property, for example, go to court, get an interpellar order, conduct a seizure through police or customs, it has really evolved. And now we as brand owners are facing an altogether different problem. we have got a massive problem in terms of, for example, online counterfeiting. And there has to be more innovative and out-of-the-box solutions that I have implemented previously for the organizations that I have worked. And maybe some examples will clarify how we dealt with the problem. Effectively, actually. So we went to the police, for example, for a raid action. But we knew that this counterfeiter is really having a lot of databases of our customers that they are supplying to, right? So I started thinking, why can't we really take help of a disk imaging expert who would go there, duly authorized by law enforcement, either under a court order or under the order of a police officer, who can actually image the entire laptop or the computer or even the mobile phone of the counterfeiter and take as much information from there as he has that can be effectively used by us, for example, to reach out to his upstream suppliers, downstream customers. We can even utilize that for something that we call win-back. So for example, this counterfeiter supplied a lot of counterfeits to the government organizations. And what we did was, we reached out to these government organizations and we said, well, you've been buying counterfeits unknowingly. Please talk to us so we can give you the genuine products, right? So that is the response that I adopted as a brand protection professional, to answer your question, that really helped my organization and my brand grow to the next level. And another example I can give, for example, is I have seen many brands not being a willing partner to prosecution, to criminal prosecution. Once the raid happens, the case is left from their side. So be a willing partner in prosecution and closure of the case is my takeaway. Take the case to its logical conclusion. Make sure that the infringer is penalized or prosecuted till the very end. He's given, for example, punishment appropriately by the code of law. And don't just leave it at the raid level. Do you agree with me, Pankaj?
Absolutely. You bang on. Yeah, you bang on, Anubhav, on that we need to take it to a logical conclusion, whatever we start off. And talking about the solution set and the experiences there, I would like to add on, going along with the topic, to say, 360-degree strategy on brand protection. So, again, as we view it, and I was on the brand owner side for the longest period of time, for 16 and a half years. Now on the consulting side, because I learned that there is an approach which is what we can adopt, which can benefit other industry segments and other clients as well. So I thought of starting off with this specialist brand protection company, which does nothing but only brand protection. But our definition of brand protection is pretty wide. I would want to share some anecdotes and some approaches, which is where we will talk about this 360-degree strategy. So brand protection is not only about IP protection, as it is being traditionally pegged as. You protect your trademark, copyright, creation designs, but it's also about protecting your revenue. It's also protecting your channel. It's also protecting your trust, the trust which your consumers and the patients that have in your pockets. Right. So this is something which we can do as a part of a holistic framework and addressing every nugget in the supply chain. As I was telling Panduranga just before our session, that counterfeiters do not create their own supply chain. They do not create their own distribution network. Counterfeiters would penetrate into the genuine product supply chain where we have the weak link. As a brand owner, we have the weak link and we need to identify that. So as a first step, what we need to do is we need to assess as to what is the risk, what is the quantum of or the size of the price that we are doing. Have we mapped out our genuine product supply chain? And have we understood how does the counterfeiter operate in that space? So map out the genuine product supply chain, map out the counterfeit product supply chain, overlay on top of each other and see where are the gaps, where are the leakage points, or where are the intrusion points, and try and mitigate the circumstance in a collective way. Then talk about protection. So first is assess. Second comes is protection. You talk about protection in terms of your IP rights protection. So trademark registrations, copyright registrations, patent, design, GI registrations, that is mandatory. But at the same time, you need to talk about supply chain protection as well. How to maintain the integrity of the supply chain. And there are a whole list, there's an entire list which is there. There are 12 industry best practices around supply chain integrity, which I'll touch upon briefly. But at the same time, you should also be looking at product protection. So product, when we talk about, is the physical product. At the same time, packaging as well. You need to treat packaging also as a product. So product protection includes packaging protection as well. And by protection, it means adding product authentication features, be it overt, covert, forensic, or digital features, or a mix of either of them or all of them, depending on what the product needs. So assess what is the need for what is the vulnerability of your product to get counterfeited or product packaging to get counterfeited, and then describe and come up with a solution set or an authentication solution which can help address that. And it doesn't stop there. Merely adding a product authentication feature does not solve for everything. You need to be really putting that to use. And this has to be a targeted approach. If you don't have a plan to use the product authentication features, you're basically adding to the costs. Next comes is monitoring. So it is, again, in the digital world, it is important. And as the e-commerce is growing in the country, as estimated, and Panduranga can correct me, it is estimated to be about 15% of the trade which is there on the e-commerce place. And it's growing.
It is 19%. It is a survey response is 19%.
I'm not the expert, buddy.
It is not that everyone would have responded to. I think it's a limited survey. It could be bigger number, but survey numbers are showing at 19%.
Right, 19%. So it is growing every day. And when we talk about monitoring, we need to monitor our digital spaces. We need to monitor our physical spaces as well. So traditional distribution channels we need to monitor, and we need to monitor digital channels as well. And there are technologies available for us to do that. We need to look at the data sets which are available to us, because data tells a story. So there's a complete program around how do we analyze data and how do we come onto that. And gather market intelligence, essentially. When we talk about gathering market intelligence, it could be using external sources, it could be using industry data, it could be using your sales and marketing people to be doing that. Next comes is to responding to the incidents, which is more of effectively managing the incidents once you have been reported of a counterfeit incident or a incident of product diversion. How do you respond to those incidents? Have a standard process around it. Understand the roles and responsibility and your role effectively in the process. And have a solid, robust investigation and enforcement strategy, keeping in mind the end objective as to what is desired, right? And to maximize the impact of these enforcement actions, you should also look at an effective communication strategy, which could be internal stakeholder focused, it could be external stakeholder focused, it could be a mix of both. I'll quickly jump on. I just understand. I want to hear it from Chhavi and from Anubhav as well. But essentially, influencing and collaborating with the like-minded people, like-minded associations, and like-minded industry segments is another way when you can possibly influence the government policy, as also ask for an enhancement of the penalties. One of the key things that we forget and we leave out usually, because there are three stakeholders importantly in this fight against counterfeits. One is the government, other is the brand owner, third is the consumers. And we always downplay and underplay the role of the consumers in this fight against the counterfeit. So there needs to be a plan to engage the consumers. They could be your eyes and ears, they could share the intelligence, and they could also provide details of where this illicit trade activity is happening. Last but not the least is to measure whatever you're doing. So I've always believed whatever gets measured gets done. So need to essentially set up a baseline as to where you are starting off from. Develop a defined program and essentially measure the success. Post you have taken some steps, all the steps, whatever you decide, whatever is the best, whatever is in the best interest of your brand. And this all needs to have a program oversight by the top management. It's as a brand owner, you may be as an individual doing something, but you need to have a management oversight, and it needs to be enshrined. The brand protection strategy needs to be enshrined in the management strategy. So with this,
yeah, Pankaj, this is really helpful. Took us through entire the realm of possible actions that we can take. I think those somewhat substance of this conversation is leading me to say the old methods are not bad. You have to change your approach, and most importantly, your investigation should also be so evolved so that you'll be able to go back to the traceability of those individuals, and most importantly, try and figure out where the supply chain is broke, right? As to how these spurious products are infiltrating into the system, coming into the system. Should we be able to identify? I think we will mostly solve it, and I think top of it, partnering with e-commerce players will also should be an effort where the e-commerce players also have to come together and work, brand registration, take down notices, taking actions against those sellers, right? Cooperating with the law enforcement agencies, and consumer awareness. Consumer awareness is also a key point. I know there are few sites, even today, you can buy Raven glasses at 299 rupees. All right, and Gucci belts at 299 rupees. There are sites who selling it, but they sell and the customer buy it. Now, these customers do not know whether those products are spurious products. I do not agree that customers not aware these products are spurious. For them, they could buy them because they could afford it, right? I think the product pricing, there are a lot of other stuff where the brand protection team can really contribute for management to make decisions in terms of how we could look to cater to the low income group of consumers, right? You have a product for low income group individuals. Maybe if that is not the key selling proposition for the brand, it's all different. Matters as to company have to closely work and also have established their own brand protection program within the organization, which looks into all of those points, right? And then accordingly advise the management. I think these probably could help in to get these companies also to ready for this digital era where this brand protection could be more effective. Right? I think this was interesting. I just want to go to the next question. Right? I'll have asked this question to Anubhav. Anubhav, can you just tell the audience that what protective measures can brands take to anticipate and mitigate potential threat of their online reputation?
So there are a number of things that brands, I believe, can do and have done previously. And I can share some examples with you that might enrich the conversation. One, the brands can, for example, when it comes to online counterfeiting, they can partner specifically with brands, with marketplaces. And what I mean is that marketplaces also carefully scrutinize the brands with whom they want to work and whom they want to prioritize. This is as per what I've done in the past, without naming anyone. I can clearly tell you that you need to show that you are so important to the marketplace that you deserve good treatment from the marketplace. marketplace, right? You are so important. Maybe you are vocal, you are influential, you are a thought leader. And that partnership with the marketplace helps prioritize your enforcement actions as compared to many other brands which marketplaces are not able to focus on. Therefore, one strategy, please make sure you are heard in front of the right people and reach out. Apart from that, there can be so many things that a brand can do. For example, they can, again, these are out of the box solutions that I've seen being implemented and work very well. For example, a brand can always incentivize the reporting of infringements. And what I mean is that they can involve their resellers, their employees, their sales staff, and even customers in reporting infringements and counterfeiting, so that they get more robust data about counterfeiting and can tackle it. And there are various schemes that we can run really to make sure that brands are getting better information about what is happening in the market. Then counterfeit market share assessment is one of the ways in which brands can really understand the size of the problem and create relationships with these intermediaries, social media, etc. Apart from that, there is a specific conversation that brands need to have with marketplaces for something that we call gating. I'm sure some of us would have heard about this word, this mysterious word called gating, but this is the most important word for many brands that really sell their products on online marketplaces. There are so many restrictions that brands want marketplaces to have in place. For example, these restrictions can be based on prices, on, for example, a risk assessment of the seller, etc. So brands are not happy with the fact that everyone is able to sell their products on an Amazon or a Flipkart, right? They want to reduce that number of sellers. And for that, they always have a conversation with the marketplace to ensure that there is gating. But this is a very sensitive conversation that can be handled only using certain strategies, which have really helped. So in my opinion, brands should really work towards talking about more about gating.
Great point here. I'd just like to add on to incentivizing the consumers. So the Government of India is running a scheme. I'm not sure many people know about it or not. They have a whistleblower policy, and this is typically for the pharma industry. If anybody, member of the general public, reports about counterfeit manufacturing, they can get reward up to 25 lakh rupees. So, and this scheme was announced sometime in 2011. Very few people have taken benefit of this, but this is running. To add to what Anubhav was saying, so brands are running these kind of incentivization schemes. The Government of India also runs those, and if it is done in collaboration between the brand owners and the government, and also a proper communication goes out to the right stakeholders, you will see a greater result or greater amount of intelligence being generated in this space.
Yeah, great. Chhavi, you want to add?
I think consumer education or awareness about IP to start with, and then to create a differentiation between an authentic product and a counterfeit is very important. We often, brands invest a lot of resources in giving workshops or training modules and identifying as to, in fact, there are a lot of methodologies. Sometimes a lot of brands use QR codes or some schemes that you register your product, and that's when the warranty triggers. That's another way of saying to create a genuine product or not. To say something on those lines. I mean,
like holograms.
Exactly. RFIDs or holograms or something which generates a OTP in your phone number or something or the other wherein you can validate whether you have an authentic product or not. So brands are really creating that kind of awareness. And that's really required because, I mean, as I said, as soon as the technology in terms of e-commerce or other spaces like Telegram or other things are exploding in terms of selling places per se, and I mean, counterfeiters also are getting one step ahead of us and developing all this at a faster pace. So we also need to kind of cope up and keep doing this. I think the important piece is doing this recurrently again and again and again. And think of it as an investment and for consumer trust that this is what is your ROI.
Well said. I think one of the important points which Anubhav mentioned was to make sure that you have created an avenue where reporting is made, right? If you popularize that avenue, could be a reporting ID, call, whatever these details, then possibility that people who are aware of it will be able to report it. If someone otherwise gets to know and don't know where to report it, likely that they will miss it out and will not report it, right? They may be like looking out and they would, in the process, would lose out on this information to be shared with the right channel. I think that's very important and valid point that you have mentioned. Otherwise, like you want to add something?
Again, it is being contemplated by the pharma industry to have a national helpline number for reporting counterfeits on the lines of 112 that we have as an emergency number. So they would want to have a user because as mandated by several and the email ID is to be provided. So there is a forum, but who is looking at it, who is monitoring it, who is governing that is something which is not clear. So pharma industry is contemplating coming together, making a recommendation to the ministry to have a drug helpline number to be incorporated, a common number which is what the consumer and the patients can actually use to implement. So I'm just sharing that.
That will be a good initiative. I think we are almost at the end of the session. I would thank you all my dear panelists for sharing your mind with the audience.